Hello, good morning, students. Today we'll begin with the third chapter of your Vistas book, The Journey to the End of the Earth, written by Tishani Doshi. Now, when we begin with this particular chapter, when we are beginning with the explanation of the chapter, there is a question given over here, and it says if you want to know more about this planet's Earth's past over here, how would you like to know that about the past, about its present, and about its future? How would it be? How was it earlier, and how is it right now in the present stage? So, what would be the real place to know about the whole things or these whole questions? Now, the real place from where we get the answers to about the Earth's past, present, and future, there's only one place on this planet Earth, and that is Antarctica. Antarctica is a continent in the South Pole in the southern hemisphere of our Earth, and we'll begin this chapter and we'll read this chapter and we'll come to know about the lovely things that Antarctica has about it. And Tishani Doshi has gone to this particular place, and she shares each and lovely experience of all this wonderful place over here. This is basically uninhabited. People generally do not live over here on this particular continent over here. But the thing is this ki there are many still stations over there to of the people over there of the different countries over there who actually go to work over there. There are some permanent bases, you can say, in this form, and teams go and come back, and they do their work over there. They do their discoveries and research works over there. So for that purpose, there are many such installations over there. So people go and study over there about the Earth's, to know about the Earth's past, to know about the Earth's present and the Earth's future. Now we'll begin with when we are beginning with this. So let's. I want to just tell you about Tishani Doshi, who is the writer of this particular chapter. She was born in 9 December 1975, and she is still living, and she is of age 44. She was born in Chennai, and she is an Indian poet, journalist, and a dancer too. And her mother was a Belgian. She belonged to Belgium country, and her father is a Gujarati, and her first novel was The Pleasure Seekers. It was published in 2010, and she writes a blog titled Hit or Miss on Cricinfo, which is a cricket related website, and she has done a lot of commentaries on TV in season 2 of IPL also. IPL means Indian Premier League also, my dear students. Now, Antarctica, as I told you, is a place of the southernmost continent, and it's a place of the South Pole also. So, it's a very important place on this planet Earth, and it has lovely things. And what are those lovely things? We'll come to know when we'll read this particular chapter. And this begins with how Tishani Doshi actually went to that particular place, and she saw lovely things and different things, and we'll come to know in this. Now, reading, so let's have the explanation of this chapter line by line. So it starts early this year. I found myself aboard a Russian vessel, research vessel. When we say vessel means over here ships. So the name of the research vessel, research ship that actually went to over there in Antarctica to study, in which Tishani Doshi was a part of. The name was Academic Shokalasky. That's the name. That's a Russian academic vessel, a research vessel. So it's Academic Shokalasky. So that's the real pronunciation. That's the real name. And it heads towards heading towards the coldest, driest, windiest continent in the world. This is one of the coldest continent of the world, as it's written over here. Even in the summers, the temperatures are below -5 degrees centigrade, and in the coldest of the seasons, it is below -40 degrees. So it's a very coldest continent. It is one of the driest also. It's a dry and a windiest continent. Basically, there are about 4 or 5 peaks over there present over there, and you can see in the map of Antarctica, and there are 4 or 5 mountains, five if I'm not wrong, there are 5 mountains over there, and that are above about 4,500 meters in height. So that's also quite big mountains over there, present over there. Apart from that, they are generally it's a big long just flat line, you can say, where winds blow at a very great speed. So that is why it's called the windiest continent of the world. And it's also because there are less human installations made over there for research purposes. So when we say research work, so it's generally and that the amount of the snow that is present over there, that is many meters, that is of many meters. So it is one of the coldest places, and people generally do not live over there, but whoever live over there or who go over there they actually go over there to do the research work only. And for that purposes, the different teams of the world of different countries go over there, and they have made their bases over there. Even India is having one of their bases over there in Antarctica. Now moving ahead, Antarctica, my journey began about 13.09 degrees north of equator in Madras. So when actually Tishani Doshi actually started this particular journey, she started from Madras, it seems, and involved crossing 9 time zones, 6 checkpoints, and 3 bodies of water. So she had to cross a long distance. Now, seeing from Madras seems it's very easy going from Madras directly to this, but doesn't mean that the research vessel would take Tishani Doshi from Madras. It can be coming from a different particular place. So just because it was a research vessel, and the people who work over it or who come there to study it, or who go over there to go for pleasure seeking over there, who want to live that lovely moments over there, so they have to spend a lot of money, and they might belong to different countries of the world, and the research vessel picks them from different parts of the world. In this way we can say that. So she actually also had to cross about 6 checkpoints, 9 time zones, and 3 bodies of water, and at least as many ecospheres means as many as regions where actually life is sustaining. So by the time I actually set foot on the Antarctican continent, I had been traveling over 100 hours in combination of a car, an aeroplane, and a ship. So it's about 100 hours of journey reaching this particular Antarctican continent. Not the whole particular journey, but just the journey from going and the reaching the destination was a 100-hour journey. That was done by a car, that was done by a ship, that was done by aeroplane also. So it was a combination of all these things. And so my first emotion on facing Antarctican expansive white landscape or white scenery or white panorama, you can say panorama, what she saw, that white scenery, that what she saw, the snow, the ice that was present over there, what she saw was an uninterrupted blue horizon was a relief. Uninterrupted means which is not interrupted by anybody. So that's a particular place untouched by people, and just because generally people don't live over there, so it's an untouched continent. Basically, this particular place is blue, and it's a blue horizon over there. Sky is also clear over there, and it's not like any other part of our country, especially India. It's of such sort. So it's not so. The sky is also clear over there. It's very lovely, just simply because there is no pollution. Generally seen no pollution over there in that particular part of the continent. So the sky above is also very clear also. So with this we come to know it's a blue horizon over there. The sky is even blue over there, and followed up with a immediate and profound means extreme or intense or heartfelt wonder. She was wondered with what she saw over there. Wonder at its immensity. When we say immensity, it means the size or scale or extent with which it was so lovely and beautiful. Now, and its isolation, its remoteness, as this particular continent is not connected, just like as Europe is connected to Asia, so it's not connected to any other part of the continent of the world. So it's remote and it's cold, it's deadly, you can say, deadly cold over there. So, but moving ahead, but mainly at how there could ever have been a time when India and Antarctica were part of the same landmass. But my dear student, there was a point of time in the world's history when India was a part of this particular continent. Now, there are three different sections in this particular story, and we'll go one by one. So, let's first study about this particular history, parts of history of this continent, Antarctica. So 650 million years ago, this all happened about 650 million years ago, my dear student. A giant amalgamated southern subcontinent, southern supercontinent, my dear students, and the name was Gondwana. So it was a amalgamated continent, supercontinent. Amalgamated means a combined, consolidated, or integrated. So in these about 50 million years ago, 650 million years ago, so what happened? There were different parts broke from this particular continent, and they shifted towards the northern side of the earth. So we see, and in this way, a part of India also shifted to the northern side. So in India was sometime there was a part of land of India that was at some point of time was a part of Antarctica also. Now Gondwana did indeed exist, and centered roughly around the present day Antarctica. Things were quite different then, and just because it was 650 million years ago, my dear students, it was a time that human race didn't existed on this planet Earth, and they hadn't arrived on the global scene. According to science, human being didn't existed at that point of time, and the climate was much warmer. It was a warmer climate at that point of time, hosting a huge variety of flora and fauna. And it was not a continent at that point of time. It was not cold as it is today, nowadays. It's not a -5 to around -40, -50 degrees. It was not cold at that point of time. It was a lovely continent where actually flora and fauna was all available. There was a lovely green vegetation available over there in this particular continent about 650 million years ago, and human being did not existed at that point of time on this planet Earth. Now moving ahead, my dear students, for 500 million years ago, Gondwana thrived. Thrived means Gondwana was this continent that actually flourished. Life flourished over here in this particular continent. But around the time when the dinosaurs were wiped out and the age of the mammals got underway, the landmass was forced to separate into countries. So when the dinosaurs actually got wiped out and this thing happened, so landmass was also forced to separate into countries, and it got shifted, and in such a part thing happened with India also, and shaping the globe as much as we know it today. The globe on which we are living right now, the shapes of the different countries and continents that we have today is somewhat not so at that point of time. So a moment this particular piece of land, Gondwana actually, and there were pieces of land that got separated from this particular supercontinent, and they formed different countries and islands and got shifted to the northern side. Now moving ahead, and to visit Antarctica now is to be a part of that history. Now, if anyone wants to study history of this planet Earth, the best place to study is this particular continent. Now, why is it actually necessary? Let's read ahead. So we'll come to know why is it necessary to read the Earth's history, and why is it necessary to read the Earth's history in this particular place Antarctica, we'll come to know. To get a grasp of where we have come from and where we could possibly be heading. So, reading the past, the things what has happened, we can study over there, and we could know how far the future of this supercontinent is and where we will be, the Earth's future will be moving ahead. So we come to know all this about from this particular place, this supercontinent, this continent whose name is Antarctica. Now, my dear students, it's to understand the significance or the importance of calderon folds and the Precambrian granite shields. Now, my dear students, there were Precambrian granite shields and the calderon folds given over here. So, calderon actually has emerged from the word cordillera, and it is an extensive chain of mountains or mountain ranges. The word has been borrowed from a Spanish word Cuerda, Cucuerda, Cuerda, and which means actually hope. And so it's a group of mountains and mountain ranges over there. So it emerged from that particular group of mountains and mountain ranges, which actually means hope. And the Precambrian shields over there. Now, Precambrian means it is actually, when we use the word Precambrian, it is actually the earliest period of time between about 4,600 million years ago till 540-300 million years ago, from where the earth was formed until the first simple forms of life actually started appearing. So that's particular point of time when life on planet Earth, not human being, but life on planet Earth actually started happening and started existing. So it is this particular point of time. This period of time is called Precambrian period. So this is Precambrian granite shields, and there are such kind of rocks over there. You can study the history of so old period of time going over there, and just because people don't live over there, and from many lakhs of years, many million years, people have not been living over there. So this is the loveliest place to study this particular continent. Now moving ahead, my dear students. So shields means it's actually a large area of exposed Precambrian crystalline igneous rocks, which are generally formed by the help of some volcanic activity or earthquake activity. Generally, crystalline rocks basically happens with the activity of the rocks. Rock formation is actually formed simply because of the magma flow and all these things, so that emerge from the Earth's crust. And so volcanic eruption is one such activity. So shields, when we say a shield over here, so it means a large area of exposed, it's open Precambrian crystalline igneous and high grade metamorphic stable areas are still over there, and it's all remained untouched, my dear students. Now let's move ahead. So significance of these calderon folds, then Precambrian granite shields, and ozone and carbon. The person who wants to study about the ozone layer can go over there and study the difference of what has happened when there is so much of pollution all over the world. We can study and go and study about ozone layer over there and the carbon over there. And then we can study about the evolution or the development of the human race and the life over there. And its extinction also, there are things like extermination of different dinosaurs at point of time, and there were different plants and different animals, insects, organisms, microorganisms that actually were present many millions of years ago, but now do not happen to exist on this planet Earth. So we can go and study those things over there. Now let's move ahead, my dear students. When you think about all that can happen in a million years, So these are things which happen in a many millions of years. It can get pretty mind-boggling. This is something which is overwhelming, which is something startling. Imagine India pushing northwards and jamming against the Asia. As I told you earlier, that a part of India was a part of the Gondwana part, and that actually got separated from this Antarctican continent and got just attached and gripped with the Asian continent, and this is how. Now let's move ahead over here, as it says over here. So India pushing northwards, jamming against Asia to buckle itself, to join itself, to fasten itself, to hook itself with this particular continent in which we are living today, right now, the Asian continent, and forming of the Himalayas. It all has happened because of this. Then South America drifting off to join North America. The South America was also drifting at that point of time when India was also drifting towards the northern part. So South America was also drifting. It was also doing so. It was happening so, carried slowly by the slow current of air and water, you can say, and opening up the Drake Passage. That became a passage between this continent of South America and here in Asia. There became a small passage over there. That passage is called as Drake Passage, and it still exists. And I'll be providing you some content over there which has the map of this particular continent also, and you can see this particular Drake Passage on the map of Antarctica. You will find it over there. Then moving ahead, to create a cold circumpolar current, and it creates a cold circumpolar current. When we say circumpolar, it means around the poles. When we are talking of Antarctica, so it automatically means around South Pole. So circumpolar current around this particular South Pole. So there is a cold current. When we say cold current means actually flow of water. So the flow of water, the cold flow of water is flowing over here, keeping Antarctica rigid. It's actually stiff and firm and desolate. It seems barren, and it's deserty, it's solitary and isolated from the rest part of the world. So it's a lot of different continent to study. Now, my dear students, the last paragraph on page number 19, it says, for a sun worshipping South Indian like myself. Now, Tishani Doshi belonged to Madras, Chennai. It's written over here, 2 weeks in a place where 90% of the Earth's total ice volumes were stored is a chilly prospect. That's a very lovely, chilling landscape, panorama, a view that actually presents over there. Where it's about the totals, 90% of the Earth's total ice is present over there. A stored in chilling prospect, and not just for circulatory and metabolic functions of this Earth. It's not just for circulation of the water and other metabolic functions of the planet Earth. It's not just for that, but also for the imagination also. It seems so lovely. This particular place is so lovely to view, where to go over there to see the lovely thing of nature, and how life exists over there in such deadly conditions where it's so cold. So it's like walking into a giant ping pong ball. When we say ping pong ball, my dear students, ping pong ball is actually a table tennis ball. Is just going, and ones who would go into this particular place would like to come back again and again and again to this particular place. So that is why it's considered, it's written over here, it's like walking into a giant ping pong ball. If you are trapped within a giant ping pong ball, you would go from a particular place and come back again. So a person who has come to Antarctica will surely come back over here to see the lovely creation, you can say, that is over here. The things, the nature has for us, and we can study over that. And a divide of human markers, lacking of human markers, there are generally no buildings over there. Yes, there are human installations over there, but the people who go over there actually make tents. They make some kind of research work, whatever they are doing. They make some kind of tanks or something, metallic tanks or something, where they actually live over there to work over there. And there are it's very less that people live over there. So this particular place lacks human markers, so people generally don't live over here. And it's written over here, no trees, no billboards. Billboards, my dear students, is advertisement boards. So generally in cities we find it over here. Whenever we are in a place where there is human being living over there, so there we find billboards over there, there we find advertisement boards over there, but it's not present in this particular place. So, and buildings you won't find over here. As it's written, you lost all earthly sense of perspective and time here. When we say perspective, it means view. A person who goes over there doesn't feel himself or herself that the person is on planet Earth, because planet Earth is actually a place where human beings live there, and when a person goes over there, it seems that actually there is no existence of human race living over there. It just seems this way. Now the visual scale ranges from the macroscopic to the mighty. Now the organisms present in this deadly condition from -5 to -40, -50 degrees centigrade, where temperatures goes to -40, -50 degrees centigrade. So, my dear students, there are still organisms, there are still animals living over there, and it can be from ordinary midges and mites. My dear students, midges and mites is something, midges, I want to tell you, is a small or a minute two-winged fly that forms swamps and breeds near water or marshy areas. Now, if such kind of a fly lives over there, living in such deadly conditions where the warm temperature, the hottest temperature is around -5 degrees centigrade, so you can just imagine how cold this particular place is. So you can just imagine how cold this particular place is. So, and in such a particular place, midges are available over there. The small two-winged fly actually live over there, and there are mites, there are small insects or animals living over there, and two big blue whales and icebergs you can see over here, all could be seen over here. As big, the iceberg is not just a common piece of a big floating ice, it's as big as countries. As it's written over here in brackets, the largest recorded was the size of Belgium. Now, Belgium is a country, and it's somewhat a bit shorter the size of the state of Haryana in India. So you can just imagine how big the icebergs present over here are. It's very, very big. So you can just imagine the immense nature of these icebergs present over here. Now days go on, and on in the surreal 24-hour austral summer light. Surreal means unusual. Austral summer light means there is sunlight present over here. Austral generally means which is related to southern hemisphere, and we say when we are talking of 24-hour austral summer light, it means that at this particular point, at this particular place on planet Earth, the southern hemisphere over here in Antarctica, sun shines at a point of time. Sun shines 24 hours. 24 hours. So we have 24 hours in a day. So sun shines over there for 24 hours. Generally in the rest part of the world, we have time. There's a time of sunrise, there is a time of sunset. But at this particular, you might be thinking, how is it possible that's sunrise, there is no sunrise and there is no sunset? My dear students, when the sun faces like suppose if My hand, if you see, this is actually if you take this is as a sun, and if you take this is as a pen as the planet Earth, and this is the South Pole and this is the North Pole. If this is the South Pole, so you just can understand that this is the place present over here is Antarctican continent. This is Antarctica. So if it is placing this face, if it is right in front and it revolves like this, so this particular part, if you see, it is just facing the sun, and this is how it rotates. This is how it revolves. This is the revolving part. So and we know that it changes the equinoxes. The Earth changes its style at a point of time. It is tilted 1 by 3 degrees, 1 degree, 33 1 by 3 degree. So if we see this, so and then it changes to other part when it reaches the other part of the revolution side. So at a point of time, there are 6 months in very short. It's not written over here, but in geography you can study over there. There are actually places. This is actually a place where 24-hour light is available, and this 24 light of sunlight is available for 6 months. This is available for 6 months. So this is something very astonishing, which we generally are unable to see anywhere else in other part of the world. And when it is, you would be thinking that if sunlight is available for 24 hours for 6 months, it also means that the rest of the 6 months, this particular part of the hemisphere, this particular part of the Earth actually does not faces the Earth, and there is 24-hour darkness present over there. There is 24-hour sheer darkness over there, because when it tilts, the Earth tilts again, and it shifts and it goes apart from the sunlight. So again, it's 24 hours just sheer darkness over there, and that happens for the next 6 months. So this is how it all happens, and this we generally don't see in the rest part of the world. And this happens in the polar region. It's just not that this thing happens over only in Antarctica, but it also happens in the topmost Arctic Circle also. It happens over there also. These are two very lovely places on planet Earth where you can see this particular thing. Now let's move ahead now. Now days go on and on in the surreal 24-hour austral summer light, and ubiquitous silence is present over there. Ubiquitous means there is a deep silence present everywhere. Ubiquitous means everywhere. So there is a silence present everywhere, and it's only interrupted only by the occasional avalanche over there. When an avalanche actually happens, avalanche is actually a big slicing of a big ice over there, and it breaks from a glacier and it falls in the sea or in the ocean, you can say. So it falls over there. So that is avalanche over there. Now, or by carving ice sheets. Carving means actually breaking or slicing. And so just because of the global temperature that gets increased, and that is increasing day by day. So it's actually because of that these avalanches in the mountains, and even this in Antarctica, we are able to see this kind of thing over there, is just because of the change of the temperature. Basically, high temperature, global high temperature, this avalanche happens. Or by carving ice sheets. Ice sheets is actually a part of a sheet that is broken from the this particular glacier, any kind of glacier. Now, carving ice sheets consecrates this place. So this particular thing makes this particular place, Antarctica, sets apart from any other part of the world. This is a very lovely place to visit. Now, it is an immersion that will force you to place yourself in the context of the Earth's geological history. It's actually a place that will place you in a place where you can study history, you can understand history. It's a lovely place. And for humans, the prognosis isn't good. When we say prognosis, it means forecast. When we go over there, when we study over there, and what we see the things over there, that doesn't feel us that it really isn't good for us if we see. Now, this was all history what we were studying about this particular Antarctican continent. Now, coming to the next thing, that is human impact. How have human impacted this particular place? Now, human civilizations have been around for a paltry 12,000 years. So, paltry means over here, if we see the whole landscape as we just studied in the beginning of the chapter, that there was a place called Gondwana, that this was a supercontinent, and this existed about 650 million years ago. My dear students, so if this old is our continent, if this old is our Earth, this is such the age of this our planet Earth, and we are living over here on this planet just back around, which we can date back around something around 12,000 years back only. So it's barely a few seconds on the geological clock. If there would have been some kind of a clock for planet Earth, so you can just think that we have just over on this planet Earth for a few seconds only, because the total time period that has been spent of the planet Earth from its existence is about 650 million years. So we human beings are living here for the past about 12,000 years. So that's very less. Now, in that short amount of time, we have managed to create quite a ruckus, etching, or a dominance over nature. Ruckus means over here the disturbing thing. We have disturbed the nature. Disturbing, and we have disturbed the nature, or etching our dominance. Etching our dominance means we have tried to dominate the nature. Etching generally means engraving. Dominance means dominating. So we have tried to dominate our nature of this planet Earth. And with our villages, towns, cities, mega cities, we have made buildings and destroyed many of the things, lovely things of the nature, we have destroyed them. So the rapid increase of human population has left us battling or struggling or striving or resisting with other species for limited resources only. We are generally fighting for our resources that we should be able to have for ourselves, but there are other living organisms present on this planet Earth. They also require the same thing. So we actually are just battling, we are just struggling and resisting things that we want these things for ourselves with other species for limited resources and the unmitigated burning of fossil fuel. Unmitigated means, my dear students, means absolute complete burning of fossil fuels has now created a blanket of carbon dioxide around the world. So there is a big layer of carbon dioxide that could be seen in the atmosphere, and this is something very deadly for our environment, and this traps the heat of the earth within this particular planet only. And what happens by that the glaciers present in all over the world, whether they are sea glaciers, whether they are mountain glaciers, they tend to melt away, which will make rise the sea level. This is something which is very drastic. Now let's move ahead. So fuels which has now created a blanket of carbon dioxide around the world, which is slowly but surely increasing the average global temperature. Now, climate change is one of the most hotly contested environmental debates of one of our own time. Will the West Antarctic ice sheet melt entirely? The question stands as, will the Antarctica, particular place where the ice is over there, the glaciers, ice is over there, will that melt automatically in a great amount? Will the Gulf Stream ocean current be disrupted? Will it be obstructed? Will it be disturbed? Will it be damaged? Will it be the end of the world as we know it? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe, maybe not. Either way, Antarctica is a crucial element in this debate. It's a crucial element. It's an important element. It's a very important element in this whole debate when talks are on. Whenever is talking is on pollution, disturbing the nature when we talk about. So if there are such kind of debates, so obviously Antarctica is a part of thing. Now, just because it's the only place in the world which has never sustained a human population and therefore remains relatively pristine. When we say pristine, it means untouched, unspoiled, just because people generally haven't been living over there. Although human beings go over there and they go for research purposes over there, yes, human beings have made their research bases over there, and people go over there and come back over there, but it still remains untouched. There are no industries present over there, so the chance of a pollution is just next to nil, you can say. So it's unspoiled, it's untouched, it's clean, it's pure in this respect. But more importantly, because it holds in its ice cores 500,000 years carbon records trapped in the layers of ice. Ice cores, my dear students, is when we study studying about this particular thing, ice cores. Let me tell you what is an ice core first of all. My dear students, an ice core is actually a core sample that is typically removed from an ice sheet, a big ice sheet or a big high mountain glacier, you can say. And since the ice forms from the incremental layers building up annual of snow, lower layers are older than the upper, and an ice core contains an ice formed over a range of periods. It's something like if I drill within this in this particular area in Antarctica, and there is glacier over there, there is snow glacier over there, there is snow over there. The particular glaciers are as deep as many meters, you can say, my dear students. So if one wants to study about what the things have happened in the past, one just can dig this particular glacier. Is something like as you dig on in any other part of the planet Earth. Like suppose if you dig 100 meters deep, and you will find different kind of rocks available in the crust, and you will be able to know that this is a different kind of a layer. The color seems different. There are different things present in the second layer. There are different things present in the third layer, and the fourth layer, and the fifth layer. These different kinds of layers are present, and they show that this was a particular layer. At some point of time, it was the topmost layer. So here also, when we are studying about the glaciers, and one wants to study about the things that have happened in the past over here for many millions of years ago. So studying these ice cores are a lovely thing. Now ice cores is something like a cylindrical block of, just like this one is a cylindrical block of ice over there, and a drilling is done into this particular glacier ice over there, and then it is extracted. So as I told you, as we do it on any other planet Earth, and when we dig the earth crust and we find the different layers, so this ice also, this glacier ice also has the same kind of different layers present on it, and we can see this, we can imagine it, how old this could thing have been. So we can study this, and this is how the researchers do study this particular kind of thing, this ice cores, and they are able to know about the Earth's past. Now let's move ahead, my dear students. So okay, so as I told you, so this is a lovely thing of ice cores, 500,000 years old carbon records can be trapped in the layers of ice, and we can study from these layers, these ice cores layers. Now, if we want to study and examine the Earth's past, present, and future, this is the lovely thing that we can study. And Antarctica is the place where we can study it, and is the best place who want to study the Earth's history. It is the best place where a person can go and study. Now, Student on Ice is actually a program, then coming on to page number 21. So, Student on Ice, the program I was working on, she was working on, Tishani Doshi was working on, with on the Scholastic aims to be exactly this, by taking high school students to the end of the world. This is a particular research vessel which takes students to this particular part of this planet Earth, to this particular continent, and they take people so that they can do the research work over there. They can study the errors, the problems that we have created to our environment, to our planet Earth, what destruction we have done to our planet Earth. So this is the lovely thing. Student on Ice is actually a program, and it has been done. And it aims to do exactly this by taking high school students to the end of the world and providing them inspiring educational opportunities with which actually will help them and foster a new understanding, encourage them, actually give a new understanding and respect for our own planet Earth. Now it's been in operation for 6 years now. This particular program, Student on Ice, has been in operation for 6 years from now. When we say 6 years from now, it's actually I had a study over on Students on Ice. We came to know around, it's somewhat around 2000 year. It's in year 2000 it started. So when we are studying over here, it's this particular work of Tishani Doshi is around 2006, year 2006. Now moving ahead, so in operation for 6 years now, headed by this particular program, the Students on Ice is actually a program which is headed by a Canadian person, and the name of the person is Jeff Green. Now my dear students, I want to tell you something about Jeff Green, that Jeff Green is a person who has tried doing things. He's a lovely person, Jeff Green, and he's the founder and the executive director of Students on Ice and Ice Foundation and the Polar Education also, Polar Education Foundation, and he has been leading polar expeditions for more than 2 decades. For more than 2 decades, you can say. So I just told from 2000 to 2020 till now, he is still taking. This man is still alive. This man is still alive. So let's move ahead. So taking students to this particular part of the world, and Jeff Green takes these students to this part of the world, and it is in operation for the past 6 years. And this particular part of the chapter was written somewhat around 2006. The whole thing is about somewhere about 2006, year 2006, and the whole student program, Student on Ice, which is a program, is headed by a Canadian person. The name is Jeff Green, and the lovely thing more about Jeff Green is that he is the first person to actually have water skied in both the polar regions. He had done water skiing in both the polar regions. The temperatures, as I told you, it's in minus degrees, so water would be very, very chilly. So you can just imagine that he loved water skiing, and he has done the water skiing in both these areas. This is very, very cold region. If anyone gets submerged in water, if stays in water over there for even about a minute, there is a chance that person can die very easily by hypothermia in the cold, and the whole body, the functioning of the blood that's going on in the body will actually stop working over there. Now let's move in, my dear students. So who got tired of actually carting celebrities or carrying celebrities and retired, and rich curiosity seekers. Curiosity seekers means the people who come there with a curiosity to see this particular place of Antarctica, who could actually only give back in a limited way. So these people who actually go over there, like if I go over there and I do things over there, it would be giving things in a very limited way. It's not in a very big way that I can return things back to the nature. Now with Students on Ice, he offers the future generation of policy makers. To these students, it actually gives a lot of benefit to this whole program and to the whole world. So with Students of Ice, he offers the future generation of policy makers a life-changing experience and age when they are ready to absorb, learn, and the most important thing, that they can actually work also on these particular things. Now, the reason the program has been so successful is because it's impossible to go anywhere near the South Pole and not being affected by it. This is a lovely thing that a person who goes over there in Antarctica and who goes to the South Pole will certainly, it just cannot happen that person cannot remain unaffected by that. It is easy to be blazed about polar ice caps. Blaze means to criticize polar caps. There are people who sit in their living rooms, in their rooms, on when they talk to the friends and all, and they just criticize that the ice caps are melting, and people are doing nothing about that. When they can themselves do some point of thing, they can do themselves. And about the ice caps, as the word says, ice cap. Cap is something which is kept on the head. So the different ice that is present on the North Pole and on the South Pole is just acts like a ice cap. So this thing works as an ice cap over there. So it is easy to actually blaze or criticize or to speak negatively about the ice caps melting, about this particular ice melting of the polar regions that it's melting, while sitting in the comfort zone of our own respective latitude and longitude wherever we are living in the world, it means over here. But when you can visibly see glaciers retreating and ice shelves collapsing, you begin to realize the threat of global warming is very real. But when people go over there, when they see that the glaciers are falling, that a whole big sheet is collapsing in sea, that the one whole sheet is just melting away, is something that people will, when they will see it with their own eyes, they will do something for the world. They will stand something. They will realize the threat, that how great is the global warming. Global warming is, my dear students, is actually something where a gradual increase of temperature is in all the temperature of the Earth's atmosphere happens, and by this global increase in temperature actually helps in the melting of the glaciers that is present in the different hemispheres, in the North Pole and the South Pole. And here, when we are talking over here, we are talking about Antarctica. So one who goes over there generally just seems that people will do some kind of action, who go over there will take some kind of action over there, and they will keep in mind how they can save our planet. And especially when sooner on ice, these are young children, these are youth that go over there, and they go and study over there. They see the damage that we human beings have done to our planet, and then in this way we'll do something better. These students will do something better for the world. Now, my dear students, Antarctica, because of a simple ecosystem and lack of biodiversity, is the place to study the ecosystem and the lack of biodiversity. Ecosystem means it is actually a biological community of interacting organisms and their physical environment, my dear students. And lack of biodiversity, so biodiversity means the variety of different plants and animal life that is present in a particular habitat. Here, when we are talking of Antarctica, so it means we are talking about this particular area, Antarctica. And biodiversity is the perfect place to study how little changes in the environment can have big repercussions, how big the outcomes or consequences can be. And take the microscopic phytoplankton. Its microscopic phytoplankton is actually, my dear students, is an organism or a plant, you can say. And when we are talking over here, we are talking of those grasses of the sea that nourish and sustain in the entire southern ocean, in this southern hemisphere. And that affects the food chain of the different animals, marine animals that are present over there, and animals, and obviously the vegetation also. Now, my dear students, these single-celled plants use the sun's energy to assimilate, to absorb carbon and synthesize organic compounds. Synthesize means to produce organic compounds in that wondrous, in that marvelous, in that wonderful, and the most important of the processes, which is called photosynthesis. the different procedures which it's helping in. Scientists warn that, excuse me, my dear students. So, scientists have warned that further depletion in the ozone layer will affect the activities of phytoplanktons over there. So, if any further activities go on in the world, the destruction that we are doing to the environment, and this goes on in this way, certainly it's a thing that depletion in the ozone layer, that is in our atmosphere, will happen. And as the ozone layer is very important, and it stops the ultraviolet rays affecting our body and our life. So it's very necessary that this ozone layer should be present safe, should be kept safe, which in turn will affect the lives of all the which will affect the activities of phytoplanktons also. Phytoplankton means all the microscopic plants and organisms, which in turn will affect the lives of the marine animals and the birds present in that region. When we say marine, we actually mean by oceanic. My dear students, in this parable, in this moral story of phytoplankton, there is a great metaphor. It is a great symbol for existence. Their existence is actually make something which something brings into existence. Taking care of small things, and the big things will fall into the place. If we take care of small things as a human being, if I take care that the pollution doesn't happen from my side, if every person on this planet Earth thinks that way, sees that way, and starts acting and working upon that way, so certainly we will be able to save our planet Earth from the deadliest of the pollution that we are still doing right now. Now the next heading is walking on the ocean. This is a thing which we generally cannot do if water is available, but it certainly can be done if the whole ocean water has turned into ice, and then we can actually walk on the ocean also. So it will become ice, and we can walk on this sea ice, you can say, oceanic ice, you can say. And let's read about it. So my Antarctic experience was full of such epiphanies. Such epiphanies means manifestations or revelations or openings. But the best occurred just short of the Antarctic Circle. What Tishani Doshi saw actually, which was just around the Antarctic Circle at the Shokolaski had managed to wedge, it has managed to slice herself into a thick white stretch of ice between peninsula and the Tadpole Island. Now, basically, this particular Antarctican continent is basically surrounded by many small islands. One such island is Tadpole Island, and nearby islands, and there are some ice sheets flowing over there. Also, big ice sheets flowing over there. And if it is, they are all connected together, so it's very difficult for a ship actually to maneuver from that particular ice. It's very difficult. So somehow the Shokolaski had to manage, or had to slice herself into the thick white stretch of ice between the peninsula actually, which is peninsula is actually a land which is bordered by three sides with water and one side with land. So, and the Tadpole Island, which was preventing us from going any further. So it wasn't possible for them to move ahead. And the captain decided we are going to turn around and head back north. And they had to take a plan, and that they had to turn the ship and they had to move north. But before they could do, actually, we were all instructed to actually step down from the ship on the oceanic floor. When we say oceanic floor, means it's ice sheet of the ocean. Okay, now moving ahead. So the captain decided we are going to turn around the head back north, but before we did, we were instructed to climb down the gangplank. The gangplank, my dear students, is actually a particular board of wood, you can say, and people are made to step down and step up a ship or a boat actually. So gangplank was put from the ship, and people were made to step down from the ship over there, and then it was tried to turn the whole ship and walk on the ocean. And so they were all 52 of us. There were 52 people over there, kitted out with Gore-Tex and glares. Kitted out means with completely just having all the equipment completely equipped in Gore-Tex. Gore-Tex is actually a kind of a synthetic waterproof fabric which is permeable to air and water vapor, and it is used in outdoor and sports clothing also, my dear students. So it's a place, it's a thing actually which keeps you safe from water. Even if you drown in water, the water won't go inside, and that cold water of the this Antarctic region won't affect your chest even, and it actually saves you from the cold winds, deadly cold winds that are blowing in that particular area. So Gore-Tex and glares. Now glares is actually goggles which you have seen that people wear when they are doing the skiing in the mountains. They wear a specific kind of a goggles, and that's called glares. And why they have to wear glares actually, my dear students, why there is a need to wear the glass? Because there is your sunlight affecting the eyes. Yes, the temperature is too cold, but it is also very important to know that the rays present over there which are constantly shining right at your eyes will damage your eyes. So it is very necessary to keep your eyes covered also, and secondly also because to keep your eyes safe from the cold winds that are blowing over there and from the ice that is present over there, and whatever the windstorms that come over there actually can actually just keep your eyes closed, because when it blows the snow comes on your eyes also, and your eyes may also just get frozen with that. So to save your eyes from being frozen, so people have to wear the glass over there, and it's very important in such kind of extreme minus temperatures. Now, walking on stark whiteness that seemed to spread out forever, underneath our feet was a meter thick ice pack. It was a 1 meter ice thick meter ice over there on which they were actually walking. That was actually the sea on which they were walking over there. So it was a 1 meter ice over there on the sea floor, you can say. and underneath it was about 180 meters of living breathing salt water flowing just below that ice. So, and in the periphery, in the edge, crab eater seals were over there in the edge. At a distance, there were crab eater seals who could be seen over there, and they were stretching out, sunning themselves on ice floes. Ice floes is a sheet of ice broken from a main ice, so they are generally keep floating. It's a sheet of floating ice. So they were sunning themselves, taking the sun bath over there in that particular on ice floes, much like the stray dogs will do actually under the shade of a banyan tree, which when they just dig a particular part and they sit over there to keep themselves cool. It was nothing short of a revelation. It was something, a lovely disclosure that happened actually, and what she saw. Everything does indeed connect. Everything is very connective, and you feel connected with that particular area. 9 time zones, 6 checkpoints, 3 bodies of water, and many such ecospheres. I was still wondering about the beauty of balance in play of our planet. How much keeps our things in place, and we have to be responsible to take care of this our own planet. And how would it be if Antarctica were to become the warm place that it once used to be? If it would have been a planet where something life would have been existing, how would it have been? Will it be around to see it? Will we able to see such a place over there? When dinosaurs would have been living over there, when mammoths would be living over there. Mammoths was a kind of animal somewhat similar to your elephant. Elephant is smaller. Mammoths were actually much bigger comparatively, and they had bigger tusks, and they were called as mammoths. And in such cold regions, there were woolly rhinos also over there, present over there. Woolly rhinos, they had big hair. These rhinos had big hair on their back. Generally, rhinos do not have big hair on their back, but at that particular point of time, there were woolly rhinos available over there which had hair on their back even. Who's to say? But after spending 2 weeks with a bunch of teenagers who still will have the idealism to actually save the world, all I can say is that a lot can happen in a million years, but what a difference a day makes. Yes, this particular part of the planet Earth, this particular part which is Antarctica, is actually a whole history in a million of years. But what we can do in a moment of time, in that particular point of time, when we see this particular thing happening, we can do something better for our planet. We can save our earth from destruction. We can save our earth from pollution. We can save our earth from the mass destruction of these glaciers, which can actually submerge the whole world into about 500 to 6 meters depth of water. The whole by the increase about 5 to 600 meters of water, if the whole level of water of the sea rises, you can just imagine that many of the countries of the world would actually will get submerged in the oceans of the world. And in such situation, certainly many people would die and countries would die. And it's better that we take care of our own planet, and especially when we are studied about this. I hope that you people on your own would take your part to keep this planet Earth safe, and you would keep your own ways how to save our planet, how to make our own planet on your own behalf, what you can do to keep our planet pollution free. With this, we come to the end of this particular chapter. I hope you understood it. Thank you.